Okay, let's talk about some kind of capabilities of this technology. So, what happened to me just recently was amazing. I kind of discovered that I was autistic, yeah, kind of, honestly. Um, I always felt very uncomfortable when people would talk about things that I wouldn't know about, or let's say, especially in English cultures, they will speak about the weather and they will have social approaches that could seem to be meaningless. Yeah, like commentaries about a puppy on the street or commentaries just about what someone is drinking, all that sort of stuff. So for me, that kind of small talk was meaninless, difficult, because I would see that it had no purpose. But the technology, probably in 3 days, couple of days, and this is related to what I was saying, that it can connect several concepts with one word. Because the concepts, let's say the concepts light up in my brain. Well, what just happened is just a Freudian sleep, which is also in this, but I will talk about that later. Even schizophrenia has a thing called word salad. The fact that I can control my word salad means that most likely I don't have schizophrenia, but I'm just control all this kind of stimulation that is induced. Now, so I was saying that this technology can light up several concepts with one word, and it did it for a while. It did it for animals. It did it for context that I couldn't understand before. So I noticed that I went my whole life reading a lot in context that were subtle and I couldn't understand. It means that I also went my whole life going in social situations in which I will not fully read the environment. Yeah. So that might be related with not having necessarily autism, or maybe a lesser degree, but also is depending in the environment in which you grow up. So yeah, one of the most difficult books that I ever read is Language and Symbolic Power. So yeah, just starting the book, Pierre Bourdieu talks about how certain language becomes part of his field. The field is the environment, or let's say the subject matter, or let's say the, the places in which certain social class thrives under a specific social cultural capital. Let's say people related with finances will have a lot of jargon related with finances, and eventually they will know people and will have this extend social capital that will be extended in the financial field. So a field can be not just finances, it could be the science, and then it could be subdivided in different fields. And another field could be the political field. And let's say maybe left-wing politics might have a different kind of field, or interwoven like kind of field of what will be right and left, etc. So then, yeah, this kind of fields, Pierre Bourdieu says that because of the language that is developed inside, makes the powerful political class owner of their own design language, the meaning, and also its creation and deployment, in such a way that they become, by default, the monopoly users of that language of power at the end. So we will have several kind of, let's say, power structures. So we cannot assume that is one, but we can assume that there are several power structures having a kind of common language between them that is not accessible to others. Then what happened to me is that, yeah, this technology start to light up the concepts, and then I start to understand some more subtle clues. After that, I think I will be able to, let's say, develop the kind of logic that can happen in these situations. And I noticed that this is highly, I would have noticed before that this will work in other ways and that are not even related with the culture. But I noticed that most of the people wouldn't understand certain kind of reading of the speeches and the rhetoric and the wording that will be done, especially, let's say, by knowledgeable people who will have a considerable amount of social capital. So social capital is, and cultural capital, social capital is the kind of connections that you have. Sometimes you are born in a family who has enough connections, meaning that some people is born with thousands of friends, thousands of contacts, thousands of acquaintances. Whilst, let's say, people like me wouldn't have that kind of social capital. I was born in Colombia. My parents both are from the from agricultural kind of estate in Colombia, and this state is known because technically most of the population, I'm talking about almost 100 years ago, were peasants. So it became the capital, the agricultural capital of Colombia. So it was not a place with huge universities. We only have one known university in the country, and it's not, let's say, it's the best in the department, but let's say hardly compete with the top universities in Colombia, and not even mention with the top world universities. Now, yeah, just want to point that I grew up in a social environment in which this capital and social cultural capital wouldn't exist, then I will not have that linguistic capital. But then this happened. Why that is important? Because maybe, yes, I say I explained the technology before, and if I'm right, it means that people could have evaluated wrongly what I would have said before. And what I have been noticing that has been exacerbated through time is that, let's say, there are new linguistical devices that has been deployed. Most likely these political design devices have been deployed from high social classes. So I don't agree with most of them. So let's say this is something related with, at least in Australia, there is a lot of safe environments. These safe environments are created for people who might have experienced some kind of bullying, etc. But then, by the fact that the language is a kind of, I wouldn't say high contextual, but I will mean something like linguistically contextual. Yeah, so it means that, yeah, as I found in a book that is by these sociologists who started to do experiments in England, and yeah, she wrote a book, very interesting, by the way, easy to understand, and also a good, let's say, aperitif to start to read sociology. She wrote Watching the English. So she explains that the, the English culture is not direct as would happen in other cultures. And in Colombia, if the example that she does is like if there is, if I'm in an office and then the weather is hot that day, well, in Colombia, let's say, I would say something, if I want the window open, I would say to my colleague, just open the window, please, because it's hot. She says that in England, someone will tend to look casually or will try to not be that direct, so it doesn't look, let's say, patronizing, or it could be seen as effort as well to be nice. I still trying to understand this kind of mindset, but yes, then a person would likely say something like, "Oh, it's a hot day. Yeah? Then what do you think about that?" Then it's also inviting the other person to join this kind of conversation. The conversation that means that will be a kind of dialogue which is safe or will be less threatening. But okay, and then the person would say, "Oh yeah, it's kind of hot today, isn't it? And, okay, I will open the window." Yeah, instead to going directly to something. But I think not talking directly brings some huge problems. Well, first, I read in one book that the French were using a kind of language that was super subtle during the Nazi invasion. So these kind of dialogues are normal. Let's say in Brazil, even the slaves will develop dances and way in which they will move words, etc. That the conquerors wouldn't understand. And I see this as a normal situation. What I don't see normal is that this is called culture. But before going that, I'm gonna make my point. Why the safe environments are not a good idea? Because you cannot have a debate. Especially younger people cannot have access to an environment in which what the dialogue is about is to have a dialectical environment in which you construct over ideas, you strengthen your critical thinking, but instead such, let's say, environment for debating becomes something that could hurt the person because the person doesn't understand that to speak about what do you think in order to learn means that you have to be willing to know that you are wrong. So if you cannot experience constantly to be wrong and be wrong and be wrong the whole time, you stop to learn. If you cannot experience that you are wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong the whole time, then your ego will protect yourself from those situations in which you cannot be contradicted, and this will lead people to have less critical thinking. And this is mainly seen as a situation in which we're going to protect minorities, we're going to create safe environment. But I haven't seen so far environments well, it does happen in my university in the ANU, and I cannot complain saying that I have not been able to talk as I do. It's rather the contrary. I've been educated in sometimes like, okay, maybe what I say could be framed in another situation. what I have noticed is like not many people dares to speak as I do. Not say that I'm wrong. That I am more, let's say, daring, or that what I say has more value. Actually, it's totally the opposite. Sometimes I found, as I just noticed, that I've been reading technically all the books wrongly, and it changed your life. Then having this situation in which also, let's say, kids can have this environment in which they expose themselves to not being hurt, but have the opportunity to strengthen themselves, is something that won't contribute for resilience in the long term. Then we will create people that will be easily afraid in the future. And this is not related that you're gonna tougher up, you're gonna just be a man or whatever. Yeah, it's like when someone says like you got balls, I actually think, man, sometimes it's about having ovaries, because the greatness nowadays that we can see and hope is, let's say, resting in, is in more of the women and minorities. That's it. But another day we talk about the patriarchy, which people think doesn't exist, but it's simply so difficult to articulate and so difficult to people also to accept it, because people is not used to change their whole view of the world from that one day to the other, precisely because they are not exposed to situations in which you have to change your mind quickly, and it's not a habit of the people to change their mind quickly, and if you don't change your mind, you cannot learn. So that's why some people say that the new skill is not learning but unlearning. And unlearning is significant because we are in an environment in which nothing makes sense. And as true surface, you have to make sense of what you see, because one of the things that I'm against too is that this technology being used to create a reality that is based on lies. Illusions are necessary, because if I want to have certain stability, I would like a politician who tells me what he gonna do, and then I will trust that person so I could vote, and I don't have to think about every day to his or her decision making. Yeah, so it means that there are things that are missing. There is a lot of information that maybe will make me afraid, will make me thoughtful, will make me consider even my, let's say, investments or future, or I will consider maybe every day a decision making. If this decision gonna happen in the government, then I have to think about these other things, etc. So then it's not necessarily to know everything that is happening. So that's why certain reality has to be smooth, in which changes happen depending on how adapted is the culture to changes. But then when you build a reality upon lies, that reality tends to fall apart. That reality also tends to be and have people confused. So there is a lot of confusion among people, similar to the story of the Babel Tower. If the reality is built upon lies, then you will have a situation in which, besides nothing making sense, as is happening to myself, in the sense that I noticed that this technology purpose is to keep you in a situation of not making sense of anything. But I see that it's also happening to the people, so I do not discard, because I try to ask the people this question, and I try to ask always about it, and they agree that nothing makes sense. They can understand the situation. And then I have also seen, let's say, the latest kind of talks about some academics that I watch online. And eventually, there is a discussion going on about if we're gonna hand up this kind of reality to our kids. I don't have kids, but okay, what legacy we're gonna give? This will be a reality in which you cannot be careless, because you are not carefree. You cannot be a kid without anxiety, because your parents gonna have anxiety. And what is happening right now is also a situation in which most of the people is experiencing a kind of paranoia. The anxiety also is related with the ego, to look normal, to look adjusted, yeah, because we are not open to other situations. And what has happened, or what I have seen with this technology, is that this is a technology that tends to create homogeneous kind of standards of living. And this most likely is related with not just how people communicate, but yeah, how people live and interact with each other. So there is a society that craves to connect with everyone, and they do their best, but then we have language barriers that I don't consider as culture for the following, because these language barriers doesn't help connect the people. Then we're gonna talk about why this is a barrier. When you are direct, people who is adjusted to be subtle seek approval first, seek acceptance, seek a signal that will kind of give a green light to maybe give a small step. This means that seeking acceptance is one of the things that, let's say, I will think that no one needs. Why is that? Because to be, you don't have to be acknowledged by the others. Still, you cannot deny the others. You have to simply not seek acceptance, but be. The others doesn't make what you are stray away. Yeah, you cannot be without the others. That's another thing that you have to be mindful. But the conception of the others doesn't describe what you are if you are pleasing the others. Then if you are seeking acceptance by pleasing the others, you cannot be. If you are not seeking acceptance, or let's say you are not seeking a kind of validation, yeah, because okay, one of the things that I see in Australia is that everyone is looking validation, but I will explain why this is not a cultural evolution, but is rather a power device. Okay, so then if, I want to acknowledge this. Let's say, in order to be autonomous, I have to be myself, take my own decisions, etc. But if the other people do not see myself or describe myself as autonomous, I'm not autonomous. Yeah. Then I don't need the acknowledgement from people to say that I'm autonomous. But in order to be autonomous, I will to live by myself without people, but then it doesn't mean that I am, because it's no one there to assert my existence. If other people assert you as autonomous, you become autonomous, even if you don't want to be. Yeah. And this is one of the paradoxes. This is because you cannot deny the environment. So the autonomy issue gives you not the solution. It's possible to be autonomous, or you are autonomous or not. Think about this. Autonomous is even desirable. What I see is this. Autonomous leads to conclude that you cannot detach yourself from the others. Yeah, because it's a kind of interaction. And when you can, let's say, somehow manipulate, decide how people communicate, then you are able to dominate the message. Yeah. So we have another kind of important axiom in which the message is the medium. You need to have three things to communicate a message. One is the message that you want to send, what you want to communicate. Yeah. The person who's gonna send the message, that will be an emitter, and the person who will receive the message. Three things. That's it. One message that comes from a source and ends up in the destiny. Okay. Then, in order to know what is the message, you need to know what is the medium in which that message is communicated. So we have the person who sends the message should have a medium in which that message will be communicated. So we add a fourth kind of factor here. So this factor is important because I would give an example. In the old days, people used to write letters. Then people sometimes will save those letters as memories. If, let's say, you were a soldier who went abroad and you receive a letter from your loved ones, they expect a letter back. And more or less they are aware, depending on how reliable is the mail, that your letter will somehow arrive, and if arrives, they will know that their letter was eventually received in the hands of the person that they love, and this soldier that was deployed will save the letter, and the family will save the letter that was sent back. So the medium becomes a sheet of paper that is somehow physical, can be saved. Yeah, let's say it's not the material to write something forever. And it's interesting what is written in things that might last for thousands of years, like rocks. Then, but we are talking about what is written in letters. Yeah. So I can, well, this soldier will save the letter, and once returned home, this person will keep the letters, and maybe, hopefully, this person starts a family, has, I don't know, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and then they will show to their sons and daughters what the letters were about. And being able to show that means that the message becomes even transgeneral. Over generations, you can send the message, and people will be more aware of what rights, etc. So in the old days, people might be more consciously aware of their literature, their letters, and maybe that's why we have most of the great literature in the old days, because they knew that they were leaving something for posterity. Nowadays, we have a situation in which we just write in Messenger and then it becomes information. We're not thinking about posterity. Some people might understand this kind of language in the way that every time they write is for the future, knowing and having political calculations and being, let's say, mindful of what to do, what do not do, etc. Yeah, it's not the average pedestrian that simply will not care about much of this situation because doesn't have to. Yeah, so we talk about the monopoly of the deployment of this kind of language. If well, what happens that we are talking the language uh, has a message, the message has a medium. When the medium changes, then the message changes. Let's say because nowadays there is no need to send letters, someone can use their phone to communicate with their loved ones, then we will have that the message changes. The messages won't be as before. The messages are not thoughtful, prepared, written, or maybe corrected. Maybe some people will have one sheet in which they do a kind of a sketch and then write the letter. Instead, they will simply take the phone and make the call that they need to do, and it will be not that much prepared if they don't have anything to prepare, and then this call cannot be conserved. This call will not go to their sons, their daughters, etc. Yeah. So the medium itself is telling us the message. Yeah, and the message then becomes using technology even more complicated. We have, let's say, in social media, are we posting for ourselves, for everyone? Who are we posting to? Are we conscious of this? Who is using this, let's say, information of the message? Because the medium is a company. And but what I'm going is that every time you have a new kind of medium for messages, you change the social relationships. You change the ways in which people behave. You see the way in which people have, let's say, perception of the other and perceptions of the message. Yeah. Maybe when there were Morse codes, the message should have been very concise because you don't want to make the message longer with things that are not going to the point of the message. Then I don't know, if a person dies, then you will have the Morse code saying that person died with the details, blah blah blah, and maybe just short message of condolence, but it wouldn't go in extreme detail because the medium hinders the capacity to communicate properly. Then, what I'm saying is that if I'm right, and my diagnosis then is eventually a way in which you can be in words, control thoughts, eliminate thoughts, stimulate concepts, stimulate parts of the brain that will make you more afraid, more sleepy, more horny, more angry, things that will make you have pain, coughing, Freudian sleeps. You will have technically I don't know, considerable amount of the control of the biology, and we have a total disturbance in which people relate to each other. And I'm absolutely sure that whoever is doing this doesn't understand what it's doing. I'm absolutely sure that the disturbance will be negative. I'm absolutely sure that this will create a kind of chaotic scenario. This will eventually cause entropy, because if thoughts also can be extracted, the people who is able to manipulate this technology at this time, as happened to me, must be people who has been selected especially so they will dutiful do what they are told, and that includes when they try to induce me to do terrorist attacks and indiscriminate violence against society. So these people, not saying that is bad people, because this is precisely the problem with evil, that bureaucracies becomes machines that have no accountability, and then these people might have a narrow view, extremely narrow. We have the people who will understand at least what they are doing, because otherwise, if they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't do it. Not just because it's morally wrong, it's not a problem. I'm talking about how disruptive is going to be this medium for society. But it's because when they perceive thoughts, words, etc., they might have gone through an adjustment, inculcation, acculturation, socialization, conditioning, in which most likely they will have huge triggers and huge risks over what they are doing for themselves, over what they are doing. And it means that they are risking themselves at the cost of not knowing what they are doing. Why? Because secrecy also means that less factors are taken into account. Secrecy means that also a small amount of people do calculations, yeah? And this small amount of people have no idea what they are messing up with. I'm talking about not the capacities itself, but it's actually the opposite. They are taking away what is to be, what is the person, because they their psyche will be totally messed up because they won't be able to differentiate the person. What is a projection, and what is the person? What is a fantasy, a thought, and what is the person? Imagine this. Let's say I want to be a movie director. So I will think about scenes of violence, sex, suspense, terror. Do I have to talk about that? Do I have to express them? If someone were to see my mind, this person will be perturbed and might think that actually I should be in jail. And the person who will see my mind then will not perceive what is real, because I am what I project to the others. Yeah. Just another extreme example. Let's assume there is a person who fantasizes every day killing someone, and the person never kills anyone because it's not simply what she or he wants to do. It's just a thought. Then I'm sure that people do things to be better, yeah, and that sometimes takes control, and then what is the mind is not what people is. What you do is what you present to the others. Yeah? What you think becomes private. Yeah, doesn't have a moral value. Honestly, it's just fantasy. It's not even something like probability. I don't think so. Not even possibility. But this is more something that stops to be private. Not being private change the psyche of the person. The psyche of the person who sees, the psyche of the perception, because this person will think without being adjusted to know how it feels. But this person do not knows what is a projection, what is a manifestation, what is the person being, and what is simply in the mind. Yeah, and the mind can be anything. Let's say if I read a murder novel, it doesn't make me a murderer. If I read about, I don't know, a novel of terrorism, it doesn't make me a terrorist. Yeah. And if I watch a movie about superheroes, it doesn't make me a superhero. Yeah. So then, what is private is not distinguished by the other person. And then, to know what's gonna happen in a society in which everyone knows each other's thoughts, then we most likely know that will lead to a culture of adjustment, yeah, and a culture of inculcation, acculturation, socialization, and conditioning. And then this will create a society that is totally homogeneous, because what makes us private, what makes us, let's say, to have our own personality and the desire to manifest it, what allows us to plan and then manifest it, is precisely the interaction in which we can be oneself. Yeah. If I cohibit my thoughts, then I'm being oppressed. I'm not a free thinker. And stop to being a human, and I start to become an object, an automaton, so unpredictable when life itself is unpredictability. Life itself is, again, possibility. Then if you have a culture in which this is happening, then it's possible to become a puppet master, because psychological conditioning will create triggers, and most of the recent science is based in this kind of mentality in which we can measure, then apply. But if we measure and apply to humans, then we also are making efforts to make humans predictable, to measure better. So we always will try to measure, not by creating the conditions of whatever that can flourish randomly, but we measure in order to take more exact measurements in the future. We measure to create more predictable conditions or situations in which things gonna be more predictable, and that's a huge problem. And that's what I call the betrayal of humanity, because we're gonna have this situation going from now on unless we create a new matrix. It's not normal. I mean, we have the message, the medium, and we have the receiver of the medium, and we have also let's call it the information of the message. If the message is something like hello goes back, then hello becomes just a word to start to initiate the message. It's not information in itself, it's more the convention of initiating the message. But when there is information that, let's say, the information might be something like I sent a message saying something like, let's assume I'm gonna text a friend and I ask to my friend, oh, check the stock market. The shares that you bought, they just crashed. This will make my friend sad, or will make my friend kind of delusionate, etc. This information will have a reaction, yeah, which is different to simply say hello. Yeah. If I say, let's say, something like, let's assume what happened. I don't know. Well, let's assume there is a huge event. Yeah, let's assume there is something like someone's family, someone's who is an exact kind of family to the person died. then this is reflected, I mean, the message will go to the person, and let's say will be a kind of message or information that will simply react with the person that should be, directed to, in the sense that if I knew about that person who dies and it's no one from my family, no one from my circle, then I wouldn't be that attached. Yeah. But if I know that person, if it's a person that I've been seeing at least once, I will care. Yeah. If I see the person's name in the newspaper, I will be like, well, I don't know the person. It doesn't wake up any feeling. And then we have another situation. If there is knowledge, yeah, that is just dropped in the society, you should expect that power or bounce back, the weight of the knowledge, to have a normal reaction. As this is to say, if let's say, if I'm a doctor, I go out from, let's say, the hospital, and I say to the patients, oh, happens that the person I was doing the surgery on, this person died, then they're gonna start to cry. Yeah? It's not the whole hospital that cries. Yeah? So there is a relation between the message, who received it, the weight, and the action that it should create. So we are talking about the information of the message having an action reaction. Yeah? That has been always for thousands of years in the same way, so far, regardless of the message, because privacy has always been there. When you remove privacy, whatever is generated in your brain with decision-making information, etc., will create an environment that is unbalanced, in which calculations cannot be made. Yeah? So this is a kind of Pandora box. And this is as well how I discovered this, because it's impossible that I will think something. Let's say it's impossible that I will say, let's assume you say, let's assume you're in a park, the park is full of people, and you say hello to your friend, and everyone in the park replies to you hello. I mean, you don't know the people. Then it's interesting that somehow the message and the information has a kind of action reaction. Usually we speak in ways that are also calculated, and then these things bounce back. But this is something that whoever is doing this hasn't think about. And then it becomes obvious for people like myself, yeah. And then it becomes obvious for other people, and most important, people who has been conditioned to speak in ways that are not directly obvious, but instead they wait for the information to be sipped by society, to be acknowledged and to become common knowledge. They cannot speak directly because other people cannot understand either. Yeah. So whoever is doing this doesn't know what it's doing. So it becomes also a situation in which whatever you do afterwards from now on will affect the whole future. Because this is like, technically, it's like dropping an atomic bomb. So the atomic bomb, there are arguments that say that the atomic bomb was dropped in Hiroshima because United States wanted to let know the Soviet Union that they were capable of doing such thing. They say other argument is that in that way will be the quickest way in which the war will be stopped. There are other versions that say that simply it was barbaric and this was simply a tool in which the United States will assert power. It could be taken in many different ways. Yeah. But dropping an atomic bomb in certain manners and decide the future in which the other bombs will be used. Let's say so far the only next thing that we had seen was the missile crisis, in which it's simply a kind of communication. We're just gonna put this bomb here in case. Yeah, that's it. And then we have another kind of communications in which you see like Putin saying we have nuclear bombs, and then we have this kind of nuclear, I don't know, tactic bombs, etc. Blah blah blah. Yeah. Then, what I'm talking about this because also my situation is that I don't know how long I'm gonna stay alive. In my experience, they try to do one terrorist attack. It didn't work. Again, one should have been international, then national, etc. Then it will be maybe not news, but maybe could have been taken to court because I would have said something that would have break the laws of information and disinformation. And I repeat, everything that I say is coming from my experience as I experienced my qualia, or let's say my perceptions or stimuli. Yeah. So plus I read a few books and seen a lot of videos in YouTube that are mainly lectures. So I don't know how long I'm gonna live, but I have to talk about this because it seems that whoever is doing this is not backing down. They are extrapolating. They are hurting people around me. And they're gonna continue doing it. And I have no option. I have no option. And what they are doing is kind of is the definition of evil. What they are doing is fascism. What they are doing is the negation of other realities. I never did anything wrong. I never did anything that could have been even an excuse to take me to court. And so there is a very interesting person, Paula Sanchez, very smart. She was with me in a group in which other groups would meet. A while ago, we and our friends departing from a strike that happened in Colombia, in which the peasants were brutalized. We decided to create a group that would kind of create political solidarity, and it was called United Front Colombia. From that group, we unite to something that was called the Latin American Social Forum, in which there will be other groups with, let's say, aligned political interests. I would not have seen that initially. I would have seen just like a place in which we could just meet, support each other, depending on, or maybe align in things and support each other. Let's say, kind of struggles, and yeah, I didn't know. I was continuing learning about this kind of social groups, and yeah, one of these persons was Paula Sanchez. She's now a professor in the um, University of, well, doesn't matter which university. Happens that there was a protest for Palestine, and she gave kind of food, pizzas, and water to the students, as it's also a matter of the university to do that. And I know by a fact that she's not a Hamas supporter. And then someone took pictures of her, and they were placed in two Israeli kind of media newspapers. And I'm sure one of the first things that they tried to do was link me, and they continue to try to do is to link me with Las FARC in Colombia. Yeah. So it wouldn't be casualty that the people that I know, they will try somehow to screw up, because this is fascism. Then we will have a situation as well in which I connect an USB and my computer just frozen. One of the photos that was straight away taken from that USB was placed in a hacked Facebook account of one of my friends, and in that photo I appeared with one person who used to assist to that group for a long time, which with other people who are refugees. And this person was close to the, or used to be in Las FARC, which was a communist guerrilla group. And this group, yeah, he was, let's say, during peace talks during the Pastrana government, and he was a supporter of the ex-president Santos and Nobel Peace, because he achieved the peace with Las FARC, and yeah, he used to be in the guerrilla. Because, well, at that time, I don't know, in the 60s, the Colombian government used to bomb the people, just push them away to grab the land, and they got pissed off, so they got guns and then start to shoot down the planes, etc. Whatever. Then also it mixed with Marxism, and it's a huge story, but still, they try to link, they hide, they took my photo, placed it in the Facebook of a friend that they hacked. Yeah, they hacked the Facebook of my friend, and they put that photo in which I am with him and my other friend. So whatever. My other friend, she was like the best student in the public university in which she used to study, and she was, I don't know much about her to be honest, but I know that she was the let's say the president of the student representatives in that university. So I know that she was, let's say, a prominent student at that time, etc. So whatever. Then it happened, but then happened once that they tried me to do something badly against the Australian society, and the Australian society doesn't know. I know they don't approve that. And they try again, and they try again, and they try again, and they try again. So for me, it's like I know that this is a technology. You know that you have had a lot of chances in which I tell you, let's get an agreement, let's do this, whatever. But it doesn't seem to really help at all, because whoever is doing this is not backing down. Maybe because it's systematized, maybe because the persons who follow orders, they just follow orders. It's their job. They don't think about what they are doing. So then we have a system that from outside looks mechanized, looks kind of automatic. Maybe it's an AI with a prompt that cannot be stopped because maybe no one has checked if it's going well or not. And maybe otherwise the bureaucracy is just lacking feedback loops and it cannot be modified. It's technically what happened in Nazi Germany, in which no one could disagree with the party. No, everyone was experiencing the same reality. Other people who will have different views will be disregarded and will be isolated and will be killed. The first ones to be marginalized were the Jews. The Jews were marginalized even before. So I imagine when this started to happen during the first Donald Trump's presidency. And at that time, the liberals were in power here in Australia. And I know that if I would have done anything wrong, I would have been international news. And that would have helped the first campaign of Donald Trump that I well remember that was based on immigration, the wall, and also, let's say, negating all the visas for every single person from Islamic countries. And I remember that my Facebook just before going to the hospital would show me just things from ISIS, from everywhere, but nothing sane. It will be only extreme stuff. And I was not conscious that what I was receiving could be something that would have been extremely manipulated, but all the posts, all the feed that I was watching was trying to induce a mental state. Luckily, I knew some psychoanalysis and I knew about Freud since I was, 5 years old. And I knew about the ego, superego, etc. So it's like this concept of psychoanalysis has been with me for a long time. So it didn't work. It didn't work. I knew that I was myself and I knew what was the other. Yes. So then this is why I think it is important to talk about this, because what it comes, it's gonna be chaotic, it's gonna be disrupted. It needs more people around this. The conversation needs to start. What is the solution? One of the solutions that I think is like, first, create as common knowledge the concept of counterintuitive knowledge. I mean, I'm talking about conceptualize as common knowledge the concept of counterintuitive thinking. Yeah. This is the same kind of thinking that you will see in the, let's say, the photon, that the photon is a particle and a wave. So it means that it's an unit, but at the same time, it's an energy that expands. It's not logic, it's not straightforward. Yeah. So it's something that you have to think beyond that. Let's say another way to think that is that mm, let's say sometimes people have deficiencies not because they don't take the vitamin that they need. They have to take the other vitamin that triggers something that triggers the other thing that then releases the vitamin that they need. Then putting the vitamin straight doesn't do that. And what is the other thing that should be, let's say, no? Let's say, absolutely people needs to start to know about the management of information. Why? Because in China, let's say people know, okay, the party is the one who has all the information. The party is the one who sees all the cameras. The party is like uh, watching everything, knowing everything, and they thrive in that way. What's gonna happen is that the new waves of technology gonna be installed in China so easy, like having an update of an app in your phone. Well, it's in the West, we're not gonna be adjusted that easy. Um, one of the things that that we believe, or let's say one of the uh, theories that Noam Chomsky is like manufacturing consent. Manufacturing consent might be what's gonna happen with me. Maybe I become a movie. Maybe I become an example in a conference that will be just given to certain people. Maybe I become used in certain way to create fear to other people, or maybe I would be victorious, and then I will not need to take every day the medication that I have to take. Yeah, and then I will just continue my life and helping the whole world instead to battling a meaningless situation in which is me against the biggest, I don't know, army in the world. What I did wrong? Nothing. Professing the liberal values. It really was uh, trying to create something for everyone in this, not the socialist sense, but truly something that will help humanity. Yeah. The information is moving in such a way that I'm sure that there are universities in which they cannot talk about certain things. And this is eventually one of the first steps towards totalitarianism. Yeah. And it's not at least the case, but I know that at least I noticed since I started in the education system that people is simply cautious, especially when it comes to be about, I don't know, it's knowledge. Just talking about something in a book, or giving, I don't know, something that doesn't mix well with values, the people. Then you start to see the people in the street is more stressed, more anxious. People doesn't know what's going on. People doesn't want to relate much about the situation. People is confused. How people can take kind of, I don't know, decisions. Yeah. How is that possible? How they will know who to vote if they don't know what's going on? Politicians maybe cannot speak about this either. Politicians might not even know. But if you search about target target individuals, then you will find that these people is real. If you find about Havana syndrome, then you will find that these people is real. If you find, if you try to seek things like well, gun stalking, that people who experience gun stalking is real. Yeah. And I feel righteously doing this because, as I say, I never did anything wrong. I always was careful to not do anything wrong. Yeah. And yeah, let's say most likely I've been, as it feels, that I'm being used for people in ways that will serve their interests, but I think that's not right. Because if you want to achieve a goal, especially in a democracy, especially if you are a huge army with the beacon of liberal values, then when you start first, when you start to use people as means, the people is not the end. Second, when the means betray the goal of the end is ruined already, has to be corrected. Why? Because then the means will continue to be utilized to that end. When you arrive to the end, whatever happened before has been carried on in such a way that the betrayal of the means, when you reach there, is the betrayal of the end, in the sense that if never corrected, then becomes part of it. Yeah. So it means that a path should follow a direction, and the decision making should follow according to that direction. Yeah. And this was a cup given by a friend. It's like a butterfly. I like it, but my head is quite big, so it doesn't fit me all. But so I think I leave it there, because there are reasons for this. There are reasons for this. It's gonna continue happen. What's gonna happen? I don't know how. There are ways in which this can be corrected, and small steps needs to be given to somehow correct what's happening. And in my situation, yeah, I have to take every day a medication that kills me. I have to see every day family suffering for things that they don't understand, and people nearby, people who have interacted with me a couple of days, 3 days, and sometimes, yeah, one of these persons might have irreversible damage. So that's what I'm trying to see in the next days. But then also I'm in a state of confusion, and so far, regardless of the pain, yeah, my mind hasn't changed, and I'm not gonna back down because I'm not living. I cannot have a relationship. Try to study, do my best. They don't allow me to study. They make sure that I was not reading all the readings that I should have read, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so let's see what could happen in this media, and let's see we can find a new theory of information, or at least help this kind of situation. Yeah. Okay. See us. Trump. to find the cursor. It's like my mouse is working, but I don't see the cursor. It happens the whole time. My computer has been playing funny as well, but another video will be